So if you're watching this video, you probably already have $10,000. That, by the way, is a massive goal. I had to save $10,000 twice in my life. I'll tell you that story later in this video. But if you're watching this video and you're working towards that goal, the answer is keep working. It's a really good goal to accomplish, and most people don't even get to $1,000. So 10K is a really good starting point. Now, let's get right into this video. I'm going to tell you exactly if I only had $10,000 and I just got it, what I would actually do with it. All right. Now, do me a favor and actually smash the like button. I appreciate it a ton, and it helps the channel out a lot. Now, the very first thing, guys, is you have to know that you're not special. And here's what I mean. A lot of us, when we have money, we're basically like two types of people. Type 1 is a type of person that has a lot of money, and all they see, for example, is all the things that they can have. So $10,000, I see a flat screen TV, I see a PlayStation 5, I see a new iPhone, I see this, I see that, I see going on vacation, and they spend all the money, then they don't have anything. All right, you don't want to be this type of person. Type 2 or type B is going to be the type of person that sees they have finally $10,000, but is scared to actually put this money to work. So they basically just put it in a savings account or in a CD, and they basically just have that money there. Or some people even put it in a mattress, okay? You definitely don't want to do that. But that's the idea. They're scared to actually put money to work. Now, type 3 or type C is the type of person that sees money. I have $10,000. How can I make this more money? How can I multiply? Or how can I spend it to actually put myself in a better position? I honestly believe that type C is not a natural person. I really do think it's more like these just two types of people. One is a spender, one is basically just afraid, all right? But to actually learn that, to actually try to multiply your money, that's going to come from getting advice, learning, and actually putting these things into action. That's the person you definitely want to be. But now, let me tell you my story, right? So the very first time I saved $10,000, I was in college. I did it in about 3 months, or maybe 6. I definitely don't remember. But I remember in order for me to save this much money, it took a lot of sacrifice. I was selling phones, I was selling sneakers, I had a job doing work study at the college, and I also had a job at the Gap actually working. I knew I was basically waking up super early, and I was basically going home like around 11 to 12 p.m. It was a lot of work. And when I actually got there, guess what type of person I actually was? I was like, I worked so hard, I deserve to actually get some nice things. I was type A. I basically just spent all the money on garbage. Now, honestly, here's a lesson I learned. When you're spending money, in that exact moment, you don't see it as a waste of money. You don't see the car as a bad investment. You don't see constantly eating out and getting some chicken nuggets as a bad deal, all right? You don't see those things. But 5 years into the future, you're not going to remember the new car smell. You're not going to remember all that money you spent on those meals. You're not going to remember that vacation you went on that was so glorious in the moment. Life is not about YOLO and moment to moment. Life is about basically, in this financial sense, about making investments towards your future, right? So it's very important you understand that. Now, the second time I basically saved $10,000, which was after that, and I did it in about 3 months. I think that was definitely true. It was 3 months at least, okay? I don't think it was 6 months at all, but it was about like 3 months or so. When I saved that money, I definitely did not want to spend it, and I definitely did not want to go through the hard work all over again. So I started to invest money. I had enough information to basically be a danger to myself. That's basically, I know how to open an account, I know how to buy a stock, I know how to look at a graph that what the price was last year, what the price is now. But you want to know something, guys, that's not enough information to actually make good investments, all right? So when I bought my investments and I basically spent $10,000 on stocks, I got extremely lucky. Till this day, I kind of still remember the companies I bought. I bought Etsy, I bought CXW, which is basically a company that was dealing with like, it was a jail. It was a private jail company. It was kind of crazy, okay? I don't even know why I invested in that. And then I bought like a company that was working on an obesity pill, which is crazy. And then I also bought GoPro. GoPro was a disaster. I lost like $1,500, all right? But those other 3 investments basically covered my butt, and I made it all back. So I walked away with just $10,000 from my $10,000 investment, and I got lucky, extremely lucky. I remember that obesity pill company, they killed somebody, all right? Or somebody passed away. and it was like a massive thing, and then the stock went down like crazy, and I was like, well, partially I got very lucky to take my money out early. All right, so that's something to consider. And I eventually turned that $10,000 into about $100,000. And that might sound like, Tommy, well, things went well for you. But here's a lesson. That's a bias. I would never do what I did with money back then, because I took on a lot of risks and I got extremely lucky. Nothing ever went bad. I never missed, for example, a credit card payment. I never had like a bad deal per se. And I always made a positive return on my money overall. But I got lucky. Because if I experience the unlucky part, because whenever you have risks, right, it's a 99% success rate. There's that 1%. If I had experimented with that 1%, I could not have recovered probably for years and years and years. So you don't want to go through that. So what exactly would I do if I had $10,000? Well, mostly there are two things I would basically focus on. One is my current financial position, and two is going to be increasing my earning potential and just viewing it overall. So how do I actually look at my current financial position? If I have debt, guess what? Saving 10K, we always, I know what it feels like when you have a lot of money and you're like, I don't want to spend this money on debt, because you kind of feel like I'm not going to have the money anymore. But the truth is, you're in a much worse position when you actually have a bunch of debt. I think it was like 2 years ago, or like, I think it was like, yeah, definitely like 2 years ago. I had about like $70,000 in debt, and I had to pay that off. And I paid it off all at once with like 70 grand. And I was like, in the beginning I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm just gonna invest the money. But then I was like, I'm gonna be in a better position because I'm gonna be fully debt free. I think it was $48,000, not $70,000. Yeah, it was like $48,000. So grabbed the money, I paid it all off, and today, 2 years later, I'm living off of that good faith of mine, okay? Basically saying, I don't have to worry about any payments. I don't have to keep carrying on this thing. I don't have to keep wishing the stock market's making money so I can basically keep paying this thing. It's just so much liberating. So if you have debt, anything except the mortgage, honestly, because the mortgage is too massive, I would basically just use this money to pay off my debts and become debt free. And if that costs you all your 10 grand, the answer is don't use the whole full 10 grand. Use like 9 grand and keep $1,000 in your pocket. That's what I would basically do. And then save up more money. If I still have debt left, pay it. Today, I don't have any credit cards. I don't have any loans. I don't do any of that stuff. You don't need credit to buy a house. It's like a false idea. All you need is an income, some tax statements or some tax reports, and then, for example, some bill reports. And that's basically it. You can buy a house. You can go to the bank with that stuff, and they will basically lend you money to buy a house. Now, here's the second thing. I will look at my financial position when it comes to my earning potential. What that basically means is how much money I make and what's my level of skill. If my level of skill right now is minimum wage work, the answer is that's not good, right? Because you don't want to keep working for like 15 bucks an hour, or in some places like $9 or $8 or $7 an hour. You don't want that, right? So what you kind of want to focus on is basically, what can I do to increase my level of skill? So if you're already debt free and you have this 10K or some left over, I would say, well, do I want to go to college? Do I want to do a trade school? Do I want to get a certificate? What do I want to do? And by the way, college is very expensive. It's something to consider. Remember, work or a job is something you just do for money. Try to get maximum advantage. If I can become a plumber in like 2 years or 3 years, right, and earn 60 grand, I'd rather do that than waste 4 years in college and then graduate and make, for example, like 70 grand, right? Because you know what I mean? So it all depends on what you want to do. Don't think college is the only option. Now, what about investing, Tommy? What if I want to invest, right? How would I go about that? The answer is, again, I would only invest once I'm debt free and once I have a fully funded emergency account for like at least 3 months or so. Those things are fundamentally important, because at the time when I made those investments back then, it took me a long time to get to 100K. It did not happen overnight. It was like 4 or 5 years, I think it was. But was it like 4 or 5 years? No, it was like probably less. Yeah, something like that. It was a good amount of money. But the point is, back then, I was still carrying around like $20,000 in debt. If I had paid that off, I would have been a lot better off. And I had no emergency fund because I would basically just invest all my money. If something would have gone wrong, then I would have been in deep trouble. So having no debt, having an emergency fund is going to help you out drastically. Now, if I have $10,000 and that's my case, what am I going to invest it on? The answer is I would only really invest, believe it or not, around like $1,000, like 10% worth of that money. I would put it most likely into the S&P 500. That's my only investment, by the way. I would open up an account with like Vanguard, an individual taxable account with Vanguard, invest that $1,000 and call it a day. With the rest, the $9,000, I would start basically saving up to buy a home. Even if I don't want a home right now, even if I can't imagine owning a home right now. Because here's the idea, right? Your biggest, highest cost of living is, your biggest expense is going to be your shelter costs. So you can't really think about like, I'm gonna invest $10,000 and not worrying about buying a home in the future. Because it's not like overnight you're going to have enough money to cover your rent, right? So it's not like this investment's gonna grow so fast it's gonna make me rich. That's not gonna happen if you're investing just into the S&P 500 like me, right? So you gotta be smart and you gotta be patient. So if I have 10,000, 1,000 for that, the other 9,000 for savings, and every time I get paid, I'm gonna grab 10%, keep investing, grab the rest of the savings, and basically keep saving and saving and saving. When I have enough money to buy a home, and I want a home, and I need a home, and I can buy it the right way, I buy one. And then my cost of living is going to be drastically lower once I pay it off, right? That's the big thing. You don't need as much money invested when all you have to pay to live is just a little bit of taxes and some insurance and some maintenance. But when you have to worry about a mortgage or some rent for the rest of your life, you're gonna need a lot of money invested, all right? The home I would buy, here's the formula to it. I would basically buy a home that's no more than a third of my monthly income net, and I would buy a home on a 15-year mortgage. The benefit of that is it limits you a lot on the amount of house you can buy, and that's huge. And I would put down at least 10%. That's the overall goal. I hope this video actually helps you out a lot, guys. And I know $10,000 took you a lot of work, but if it takes $10,000 to clear up your debt or to get started with it, do that. I know it's kind of scary and you kind of don't want to do it and you feel like I'm wasting my money, but it does benefit you. That's my advice. That's what I wish I would have done. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Subscribe to the channel and peace.